I know that most of us watching this video are in a safe place. But have you ever noticed that the place where most of our lives are spent is just a small, very small dot compared to this world? This means that, in addition to the safety we are lucky enough to enjoy, there are other, much harsher environments out there. Humans, in fact, have the ability to adapt to survive in many different environments and natural conditions. This is completely correct. However, when leaving the safe area, how limited is that ability to adapt? Have you ever imagined what the terrifying and extremely harsh places in this world would look like? It would be a cold place, waiting to suffocate anyone who attempted to conquer it, a place known as the largest open-air death plot on the planet, or an island with dangerous pathogens, ready to kill anyone who dares to come close. I don't know what you would call those places, but perhaps the most appropriate term is death or dead land. In such places, it is best that you never intend to get close if you still want to keep your precious life. What are those places like? Why are they so scary? And whether, with human abilities, we can conquer those death places. All your questions will be answered on the journey to explore the dead lands you absolutely must not set foot on. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel to help our channel grow stronger. Without making you wait any longer, the video will begin. First, it must be said that the death places we learn about in today's video are completely real places on Earth. They are lands that were once inhabited or are still inhabited today, but in very small numbers. What makes those places dangerous and called the Deadlands is also divided into two cases. One is caused by harsh and cruel natural conditions. Second, due to human mistakes, that land cannot support any life. And I firmly believe that after visiting these places, you will feel like you are living in an extremely safe place. First, look at these images. Do you realize they are very familiar? That's right, we are at Mount Everest, the roof of the world. At exactly 11:30 a.m. on May 29, 1953, two climbers, Edmund Hillary, a New Zealander, and Tenzing Norgay, a Nepali, successfully set foot on the highest peak on the planet for the first time. Together, they created an unforgettable moment in world history when they were the first people to conquer Mount Everest after many years of cherishing the dream of conquering the 8,148-meter-high mountain. And after 7 weeks of arduous survival between, the Himalayan snowy mountains are cold and exhausting. Those two little people did it. Carrying a 30 kilograms backpack on their shoulders, they always have to breathe extremely thin and bone-chilling air down to -1 degree Celsius. But both Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay give themselves time to enjoy life's full moments. The splendor of standing on the roof of the world. They looked out in all directions and felt success at the cost of their lives to convey the message that no matter how harsh nature is, small humans can still overcome it. The mementos they left on Mount Everest as a token of gratitude were a chocolate bar and a cross. They are symbols of faith and life, hoping that there will be other brave people who will continue to write their successes on the snow-covered mountaintops all year round. However, behind those brilliant lights, perhaps the two climbers could not have imagined that the beautiful place they had just conquered would later become the largest graveyard of explorers. Since that historic moment, people have flocked to conquer the roof of the world, but then they gradually discovered the truth. Everest is truly scary. It's a lot scarier than you can imagine. Everest has witnessed countless generations of climbers and explorers from all over the world. They carry within themselves a seemingly unquenchable enthusiasm to challenge themselves to the highest limit, and once in their lives, they write their names in the history books. Sadly, many of them never get there. As of 2016, out of a total of 4,000 climbers who conquered Mount Everest, 280 people permanently sent their bodies into the cold snow of the Himalayas. This has turned Everest into the world's largest natural death zone. Can you imagine what people will have to go through if they want to conquer the world? With such harsh and terrible natural conditions, it is probably difficult for a normal person to adapt to the weather here, let alone conquer it. But if you are a person with exceptionally good physical condition and have training experience, you will be able to climb about 2,500 meters without encountering too many problems. When passing the 2,500 meter mark, symptoms of fainting begin to appear because the body is gradually overloaded. The most common symptoms at this altitude are nausea, headaches, dizziness, and exhaustion. It doesn't sound too dangerous. If we can rest a bit, perhaps the journey can still continue. Up to 3,600 meters, your body again signals that it is not feeling well. Worse symptoms, including difficulty breathing, coughing up blood, and loss of consciousness, may appear, and at this altitude, some unfortunate people will be eliminated from the game. Those who continue to climb up to 5,400 meters will face thin air, where the amount of oxygen is only 50% of that below ground. If a person stays at this altitude for more than 30 minutes, they can die without oxygen. And finally, at 8,000 meters, you have reached the death threshold, also known as the threshold of death. The amount of oxygen at this time is only 30% compared to sea level. American professional climber David Breshears, who has conquered Everest more than once, describes this death threshold as follows. At the death threshold, even when equipped with oxygen, you still feel like it's like I'm running on a treadmill, but I'm only breathing air through a straw. How can we define it? Death zone or death zone is an area used by professional climbers around the world when a climber reaches an altitude of over 8,000 meters above sea level. At this location, oxygen is the most luxurious and expensive thing for the human lungs. An amateur climber reaching this height could lose consciousness or die after a few dozen seconds without oxygen. For professional climbers, they will also quickly get a headache and gradually lose consciousness. Lack of oxygen, combined with temperatures dropping below 0 degrees Celsius, will cause them to vomit, become disoriented, and experience hallucinations. Death will be firmly in hand if the person does not inhale oxygen and warm the body after a few minutes. And you must have agreed that there is no debate when people call Everest the death place of the world. If you are a normal person, you absolutely should not try to conquer it. You and I wouldn't have any chance of survival in a place like that. But humans always have exceptions. Humans know how to defeat death and subdue nature. The man we saw was named Reinhold Messner, a true legend among climbers. Who knew that climbing legend Messner would soon develop a passion for conquering the peak when he was just a 5-year-old boy? At an age when his peers only knew how to eat and sleep, Messner made the first expedition of his life in the Italian Dolomites, with beautiful landscapes that no other place on Earth has. By the age of 20, Reinhold Messner and his brother Günther Messner had registered to become the most talented climbers in Europe. With such a person, one can only use one word to describe it: genius. From genius to greatness is a long road, and to be considered great, there is a place Reinhold Messner must conquer. Surely, that place is the death zone of Everest. But before that, there were many people who conquered Everest. How can you have a more glorious feat than all those people? The answer is to conquer it without oxygen. Reinhold Messner was the first person to suggest exploring Everest without the aid of oxygen tanks. And given what we talked about earlier, this is almost synonymous with suicide. Despite all the objections of fellow climbers and the explanations of the scientific community, on May 8, 1978, a climbing team consisting of 2 people, Reinhold Messner and Peter Habeler, an Austrian climber, climbed Reach Everest without an oxygen tank. Indeed, at that time I was no longer myself. Everything became blurry before my eyes, and my mind was completely lost. When I stood on the roof of the world, my ears could only hear the sounds of breathing. We are gulping down the rare streams of oxygen in that extremely thin air. That's what Reinhold Messner described when remembering this magical journey. But it seems that, for him, that victory did not seem as absolute and satisfying as he wanted. Climbing Mount Everest without oxygen is inherently extraordinary in human history. Surely that feat is enough for Rangelmner to be remembered in history books. However, perhaps he did not like having to share that position with anyone. Just 2 years later, on August 20th, 1980, Armer set out to conquer Everest again. This time, he went alone. The feeling of conquering Mount Everest alone is the most difficult thing in my life. I climbed to that peak alone and returned safely. While climbing up, I slipped and fell down a crack at night and almost gave up because of hunger, cold, and fear. Then, the desire to conquer Everest alone made me stand up and continue fighting. When you reach the top, that feeling of joy is no different from the moment humanity set foot on the moon. The Everest is truly a great death zone. It was, is, and will always be like that. But you see, that is not the human limit. We still have outstanding individuals who have conquered the roof of the world and conquered Everest. Indeed, cruel nature can still be conquered by humans. However, there are places of death that humans cannot find a way to conquer because they were created by human hands. About 1 kilometer west of the Scottish coast is the small island of Gruinard. Its pristine beauty is now a thing of the past, because nearly 7 decades ago, humans turned it into one of the most dangerous areas on the planet. There are no people or animals currently living. It looks like a desolate cemetery in Hollywood post-apocalyptic movies. Indeed, anyone could lose their life in pain if they dared to set foot in this place. For decades, many people have wondered, what turned this small, beautiful island into a deadly hell? To answer that question, let's go back to the early years of World War II. The dark secret of this island, known as Death Island, will be revealed by the British. In 1940, when World War II was entering its climax, especially after a series of fierce German bombardments on England, everything seemed to be getting worse and out of control. The British government has now raised concerns about a biological weapons attack that the Germans could carry out. When the world did not know anything called nuclear weapons, biological weapons were the scariest monsters. Faced with this urgent situation, then British Prime Minister Winston Churchill wanted a similar weapon. They needed that to be ready to respond and stop the Nazis in case Hitler launched a dangerous biological weapons attack. The British quickly conducted research and determined the feasibility of a biological weapon they called the Anthrax bomb. Leading military scientists from the top-secret Biochemical Weapons Research Center have researched the possibility of attacking enemies using anthrax bacteria. The plan of those top military minds was to detonate bombs containing anthrax endospores so that this deadly bacteria would spread into the air and carry out its mission of mass murder. Do you know how scary the anthrax bacteria is? Anthrax bacteria can secrete extremely toxic proteins, causing rapid death. An adult only needs to be exposed to a very small amount of anthrax spores to die. Not only does anthrax bacteria kill people, but the area where this bacteria spreads is also polluted for a long time afterward. It seems too vague to imagine such a scary thing. Don't worry, I'll talk more about it now. Bacillus anthracis, or anthrax bacteria, is a very small, rod-shaped anaerobic bacterium. It was shown to cause disease by Robert Koch in 1876 when he took a blood sample from an infected cow, isolated the bacteria, and introduced them to laboratory mice. In the environment, when conditions are unfavorable, anthrax bacteria will form spores, depending on how they are called. Anthrax spores have a very high vitality, can survive for decades, even centuries, in harsh environments, and are recorded to be present on all continents, including cold Antarctica. The heat resistance and resistance to disinfectant chemicals of charcoal spores are truly amazing. Under the effect of 5% phenol, they survive for up to 40 days without being destroyed. When boiled at 100 degrees Celsius, they last for 10 to 15 minutes. 15 minutes when steamed at 121 degrees Celsius, and within 1 hour when dried at 150 degrees Celsius. In particular, bacteria usually exist in spore form in the soil, and it can last for decades in this state. Continuing the story of Britain's biological bomb, when the biological bomb using anthrax bacteria was researched, they needed to find a remote area to test it. And so they chose Gruinard Island as a place to research the destructive capabilities of the anthrax bomb. The first victims of this deadly disease-carrying bomb were 80 sheep. They were secretly transported to the island and silently experienced painful deaths caused by anthrax bacteria. A few days later, after the biological bomb exploded, the sheep began to die. The entire testing process was filmed by British military scientists, and it was not until 1997 that people learned about this terrifying footage.